Okay, we've got the master cylinder back on now, and our last problem was to bleed all the air out of the system. But while we're at it, we'll change the brake fluid. You know, you're supposed to change the brake fluid, according to Mercedes, once every year. The reason they want you to do that is because brake fluid is extremely, they use the word, I think the word is hydroponic. What it means is it absorbs water, it absorbs moisture. And so if you're in a real humid environment especially, or of course Mercedes talks about, you know, icy weather, cold weather, the brake fluid absorbs moisture. And when it does, it has a corrosive effect. And the corrosive effect then starts to wear into the caliper arrangement. In other words, it corrodes the piston and the seals and all the rest of that. So what they want you to do is put new brake fluid in there every year. It's not as much of a problem in a dry climate. So in order to do that, what you need to do is somehow drain all the brake fluid out of this. If you don't want a real big mess, you need to suck it out of there with some kind of a syringe and put new fresh fluid in here. And then you need to push all the old fluid out of the lines, so you need to crack the valves on all the various caliper systems, on all the valves back at the caliper in each cylinder, and push all that old fluid out and replace it with new fluid. I've got DOT4 fluid here. That's what Mercedes recommends. There's a DOT3 and a DOT4 spec. I think DOT is Department of Transportation, I'm not sure. Anyway, the lower spec just is a lower boiling point. The DOT4 spec is the high spec I know of, at least for just passenger cars, and it just means that the brake fluid has a much higher boiling point, and so that's what Mercedes recommends. It costs a little more than the DOT3, but not that much. It's worth it. So let's put some fluid in there. Remember, if this stuff spills on paint, it'll take it right off, so be careful with it. And we want to put fresh brake fluid in the system and bleed the brakes. Okay, got the reservoir full. Put that back on. And now what we're going to do is we're going to show you a two-person operation. One person needs to be working the brake pedal, and the other person needs to be cracking the valve on the caliper. We want to start with the caliper that's the farthest away from this, always when we bleed brakes. So we want to go the furthest away from the master cylinder, which would be the right rear wheel. We want to bleed that one first, then we bleed the left rear, then we come back to the right front, then we bleed the left front. So we need to bleed each one of the lines, each one at the caliper in each case, and we're going to show you just one wheel for the purposes of a two-person operation. You have to do them all the same way. And the process is as follows. I'll have Gordon pump the brake pedal, and he won't get much of a brake pedal because I got a lot of air in this line, and so the air is able to compress. But he'll pump it as best he can. Mostly it'll be on the floor. He'll hold pressure on that brake pedal. While he's holding pressure, I'll tell him to hold him, and then what that means is keep his foot in that place against that brake pedal. And then I will crack the valve open, and what we will see is air and fluid come out. And then as soon as the brake pedal goes to the floor, which in the beginning will be immediate, then it'll go to the floor and I'll know it because I can feel it. It just takes a second. Then I'll shut the valve and allow him to let the brake pedal up so that we don't suck air back into that line. So the process is simply pump them, hold them. That's what I'll say to him. He'll pump the brakes, hold them there. I'll crack the valve, the brake pedal will go to the floor. I'll shut the valve, he'll let the brake pedal back up, and we'll just do that over and over and over again until we can bleed all the air out of that line. So let's show how that's done. Okay, so we have to start with the right rear wheel. And I've taken the wheels off the car just for the ease of filming here. When you're doing this, you really don't need to take the wheels off to bleed the brakes. If we look at the brake caliper right here, there's a little dust cover over this bleeder screw right here. It's just a little rubber dust cover. We take that off. This is the bleeder screw. It almost looks like a grease zerd. And it's a 9mm in terms of its size. And so what we're going to do is have Gordon pump the brakes, and then I'm going to crack this valve open, and we're going to squirt fluid and air out of here, and we're going to have a lot of air in the fluid, and we'll be able to hear it. And then of course we close the valve, and then he pumps the brakes again, we open the valve, and we just keep doing that. So that's the two-person operation. Now I'm going to leave this little hose off of there in the beginning, but you know, when you do that, just so you can see what's happening, I'll leave the hose off so you can see the fluid coming out of there. But if I were doing this and not filming it, what I would do is just take a piece of hose, like a little piece of vacuum hose that fits over it. It's like a 1/4 inch, and it fits right over that. So it fits over the little nipple on that bleeder screw, and I would put that in a coffee can so I wouldn't have a mess. I would bleed this fluid down into a coffee can so I wouldn't get it everywhere. But when we first start, just so we can show you how it works, we're not going to put the hose on there, and we're going to have some fluid come out of that line. Okay, so Gordon is going to set the camera down and go in and pump the brakes, and we'll show you how it works. All right. Okay, now we don't really need the car running to do this. We don't need the power effect on the brake at all, because we're not trying to stop the car. We're just trying to force some fluid through the line. So, okay, Gordon, pump them. Now you can probably hear that he's pumping that brake pedal. Now hold them, and I'm going to crack this valve open. And you see, okay, pump them. I shut it. Now he's pumping them. I'm going to crack it, hold them, pump them, hold them, pump them, hold them. Now I got air in all the lines, so in the beginning he's not going to get much pedal. Now let me go ahead and put this on here just so I don't continue to make a mess here. We use the same process for all 4 wheels. Okay, pump them, hold them, open it, shut it, pump them, hold them, open it, and then shut it, pump them, hold them. Okay, that's how we bleed brakes. We'll do that for all 4 wheels, and eventually that pedal will get hard. In the beginning it's going to be real soft. Okay, Gordon. Now we're going to show how to bleed brakes with a power bleeder. This seems a really neat device. What we do is we put some fluid in the reservoir here, and then what we're going to do is this thing came from a shop, or from a supply house called Performance Products. Great supply house for Mercedes parts. And of course this thing is made to go on this particular reservoir. So it's made to go on this Mercedes. Screws right on there. So it can't have a swivel on it, so we just need to put it on there like that. And then it's got a pump. So what we do is we pump pressure, and the instructions call for about 20 pounds of pressure on the system. And so what we're going to do is put pressure on the hydraulic fluid, and we've got a source of new fluid. Then we don't need a second person to be pumping the brakes, because the way we apply pressure to the system is through this little canister full of fluid. So if we pump this up and get some pressure on the system, and remember that I've opened it and I've got air, but you can see, I don't know if the camera shows, but it's starting to now have fluid flow from the tank in, and we need 20 pounds of pressure. Actually, I've changed a couple of hoses, a couple of brake hoses, and that's why there's so much air, and that's why I need to pump this so much. If I hadn't done that, I wouldn't need, for this little job, need to pump it that nearly as much as I am. But you can see the pressure is building up, and this hose now is full of fluid. 20 pounds. So we're just going to leave that, and then we're just going to go crack those valves, and of course the fluid is going to flow. Okay, now I've got the power bleeder attached, and I also, this brake hose was cracked, and I replaced it, and it's full of air. So when we crack this open, we ought to see quite a bit of air come out. Of course we can't see the air come out, but we ought to hear it. And you can, well, I don't know whether you could hear that or not, but there, it's starting to force the air all out of there, and now it's just fluid. And of course the pressure on that power bleeder is what's forcing that fluid through the system, and so we want to let it bleed enough to get all the air and the old fluid pushed through that line so that we get new fresh fluid in our system. And let's shut it and make sure we still got lots of pressure.